32 days away from Brian Shaw versus Leonidas, so I want to review Brian's match versus Brandon Allen. One of the reasons they set up this match, at least for the storyline, was Brandon Allen beat Larry Wheels in one of the earlier King of the Tables, and also Leonidas has beat Larry Wheels, so this makes a lot of sense for seeing Brian Shaw versus Leonidas, of course. Now, I wonder how Brian Shaw would do against Larry. Obviously, Larry is completely out of the sport and in all sorts of controversy. But back to the arm wrestling. Let's review how Brian was able to handle Brandon Allen, and then we'll take a look at how Leonidas dealt with Larry Wheels. So, round one, slip. Not too much holding on, even from Brian, which he will change later. Now, in the strap, Brandon Allen has a good King's move, very good King's move. I've trained with him plenty. Now let's see what Brian is doing here. He's being a bit patient, but he's not really rising or climbing too much or hitting, like reverse hitting defensively to try and hit the fingers of Brandon. So he's a little too patient, but not making many adjustments. And Brandon Allen capitalizes, starts to kind of get into the hand, and then transitions with the press. Now, Brian upset with what he did technically in that first round, and he certainly made some adjustments. He had Devin Larrett in his corner, if I remember correctly. I actually got to see this match in person live, this event, which was fantastic. So round two, did they go right to the straps? Hold on. I'm assuming they went right to the straps. Brian agreed to go right to the straps. I think in the later rounds, obviously, we saw him clamp and hold on and not let Brandon get into the straps. So, oh wait, that was not a pin. That was a foul on Brandon, I suppose. They called an elbow foul. At least that's what the scoreboard indicates here. So restart. Same thing, kind of. Brandon able to get a press. This time he starts a little more offensive. And Brian is a little too patient, not really attacking. Brandon able to just press him in round one. But you'll see the adjustments that he makes. Here's round two, out of the straps. Here's when you see Brian clamping, not letting Brandon slip. Brandon has to elbow foul off the back to avoid getting pins. Restart. Same kind of deal. Brian's so good at holding center table out of the straps. Brandon unable to slip out in time. Just not able to slip underneath in time. And once Brian has this, it's just a little too late for Brandon to be offensively slipping enough to, be dynamic enough to get a slip, essentially. So this, you saw how hyped up Brian was after this round. This is when he realized he can win this match. Even though he lost round one, he realized with some adjustments he can win. So round three, again, trying to hold on, trying not to let Brandon slip, holding on to the thumb, completely clamping on. Is he going to be able to do that against Leonidas? I think Leonidas has to know going into this match that he has to be aware of Brian's press, but also be aware of his grip strength abilities, world-class grip strength of Brian Shaw, as we know. So here's the round three continuing. He's not letting him slip. He's going pretty much exploding hand style, almost like you would see from Cobra Rhodes or Alan Fisher or somebody, just clamping onto the thumb, basically pushing forward, not letting Brandon slip. Here, Brandon tries to go for the press to slip underneath. He does get the slip. Let's look at the strap match in round three. So Brandon was able to slip underneath that round. Round three, Brandon tries to set the King's move. This time you see Brian being a little more offensive, and he starts to go for that press. In round one, once he was dealing with the King's move, he was a little too patient, and he wasn't really climbing or going offensive. Now, round three, he made an adjustment, and you see the press, Brian's ridiculous triceps. That's something that he could potentially use against Leonidas, because we see Leonidas kind of get stretched out sometimes. So this is a position where Brian Shaw could be able to press if he's in a position where Leonidas is kind of stretched out, because Leonidas does tend to do an open top roll style if you look at a lot of his matches. Open top roll with a lot of bicep strength. So you saw the press from Brian in round 3. Let's go to I guess they review that, but it does not go through. So round 4, Brian just needs one more pin to win. Out of the straps, you're going to see him not letting Brandon get any type of position. Brandon cannot slip underneath. Looks like Brandon is attempting to try to slip underneath, but Brian kind of cutting off the bone line, gripping a little bit low and not letting Brandon slip underneath here, as you see, and then just pressing down. So that was the win for Brian Shaw, his second official super match. Obviously, his first one was against Eddie Hall. Not really, that was an exciting match, but not really one to analyze. Technically speaking, he was so new. I know he's still new in this match with Brandon Allen, but it's interesting to look at because I think if Leonidas kind of gets into an open position, we know Brian's press, as you saw there, his press is very impressive. So I guess we'll see. Is Leonidas going to try to maybe hook? What is he going to try and do? Stylistically, it's hard to predict, but it's going to be super exciting, guys. So all the links in the description. Use code TOM on the pay-per-view to save money. Also, hit like and subscribe for more arm wrestling content. We're a little over a month until this event, and I can't wait for it. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of content coming soon in the arm wrestling space.